Hi, and thanks for listening. This is going to be part two of why I started the petition. So I basically going to go over a few little events that kind of precipitated me into the rabbit hole that is the SQ, the police force here in Quebec. So as soon as when Riley died, the BEI came by, and again, that's the Bureau d'enquête indépendant, or the Independent Bureau of Investigations, came by and told me how they were going to proceed with the investigation. They said what was the most important thing is that they were going to be asking the business owners, etc., in the area if they had any surveillance cameras on the outside of their buildings and maybe they seen something. So I asked him and I said, well, what about dash cams? And they said, no, I don't think so. So I was really surprised that we didn't have any here in Quebec. I was also very surprised that they didn't have body cams, but like dash cams. You know, it's been in the United States for a long time. We're all fans of the show Cops, you know, bad boys, what you gonna do? So anyway, so that was one thing. I figured that they needed that information and that was important to them. And also, I had some of my friends look into the BEI because I couldn't really do much in the month of August. I was just really counting on the BEI to be doing their investigation. I had a lot of faith in them. I truly believed, you know, they explained to me how it was going to work and what they did and that the police didn't like them. They were a new organization without a union. So, you know, but I didn't really know who they were. And I didn't take the time to go look on the BEI's website either. So I had one of my friends do it, and he found out a lot of stuff, and he found out that there were a lot of investigations, that there were very little accusations in the cases that they had completed. They're rather new, like I had said before in part one. They're from like June 27th of 2016. It was put into law in 2013, so it took a long time for them to organize themselves. So towards after I was reading all that stuff and he gave me that information, and I started going online to see if I could find anything, uh, people, families similar to me, people not necessarily against the police, but like the police abuses, because I was like, you know, I wasn't getting anything from the SQ. I was being isolated, I felt. I was being told that the questions that we're asking were like weird, and why are you asking these questions, and don't you know we're investigating, and you're not going to know. And but yet, you know, in the United States, everything's out there. If somebody gets shot by a cop, you know who the cop is, you know his history, you know everything. I don't necessarily need to know who the cop is, but you know, I would have liked to have known if it was one. They still haven't officially told me where Riley was shot. You know, like that's not been officially told to me. So anyways, we're gonna move on. So I met this group, or I came upon this group called la coalition contre la répression et les abus policiers, which is LACRAP, which is lacrap.org. I'm going to link it down there. And he invited me to go to a vigil. I went to a vigil in October 22nd or so. And it was for victims from police interventions, police deaths. And I met some lovely people. I met Bridget Tolley, whose mother was killed by SQ patrol car. She was hit by a car, and the investigation was done by family members, you know, through different police forces. You got cousins and brothers. So, you know, it's been since a long time. And I really wasn't aware. Like, I've been out of touch a lot. So with that, you know, I just kept going on, and then I started reading more things. And then one day I received an email from both my BEI agent and the guy from La Crap, who is a militant. They call them militants in French, but in English they're activists. And they told me to go look at Mate Gioque's testimony on this Vien inquiry, which was something that I hadn't heard about. I'm embarrassed to say, but we have to accept that maybe I was naive. I was very naive. I had my head in the sand, but it's not there anymore. So basically this Vien inquiry is an inquiry that was brought about the Prime Minister in 2016, the fall of 2016, by the Prime Minister Philippe Couillard, to investigate the practices of the police forces and Aboriginal people. And then that mandate was actually expanded to also include other social services such as the hospitals, the penal system, the judiciary system, schools, discriminatory practices that Aboriginal people might be facing. So I watched Mate Gioque's testimony, and I watched it quite a few times, but the basis of it is that she explains to you how the BEI works. And the BEI works the way it works. They're going to give you information when they have it. Once they've finished their investigation, they don't go into any details with you. It's very short description that I'm going to get. And that's if I'm ready. Mate Gioque also says that a lot of families like me don't want to be contacted by the BEI, that we don't want any information. And I'm surprised to hear that, but I think that the BEI has convinced them that they can't have this information. And I was like, I didn't like that. So I said, I'm going to find out why I can't get the information. So again, watching her testimony, she's talking a lot about the parity of the police officers and the civilian workers. She also says there's a lot of frivolous allegations against police officers because they investigate sexual allegations against police officers, serious injury against civilians. They investigate deaths against civilians, and as of September 2018, they now also investigate any allegation against Aboriginal people. So watching her testimony, a lot of La Crise de Val d'Or was coming up, and I had never really heard about it, maybe in passing a few years ago. So I decided to look into that. And that's going to link the show down there. But Radio Canada television show Enquête went to Val d'Or in the spring of 2015 to investigate the missing case of Cindy Rupert House. She'd been missing since fall of 2014 and last seen in April of 2014. The SQ had failed to contact the family, or very little. The family didn't feel that they were doing any investigation, so they decided to go and do an investigative report. And once they were there and they were investigating Cindy's friends, they realized that there was a lot of other things that were going on with the police. Starlight tours, sexual favors, abuse, intimidation, all kinds of things that were happening against the police. I'm not going to go too much into the details of that because it's pretty heavy and it could be quite long, so I recommend you watch it. If you want something more on it, I could probably do something a little later about it. So what came out is that there were 32 allegations against 8 police officers in the city of Val d'Or. The city of Val d'Or has about 45 to 50 police officers. So that's 1 in 6. 1 in 6 police officers were alleged to have abused some powers, violated their code of ethics. And so those cases were investigated. They were investigated by the SQ, and then they were investigated by the SPVM, because the SQ they do an internal thing. It's there's a wheel that gets in motion, and it just seems to get lost. Some of these allegations dated back like 20 years, and some were recent as of like the week before. After the investigation was done, which it came about because the show aired on TV. It wasn't because of any other reason. Like, they may say that they were always looking into them, but, let's not kid ourselves, okay? It didn't happen. Went on the TV show, and then they did the investigation. Out of those 32 allegations, only 2 were founded, and accusations were brought against 2 police officers. One of those police officers, the allegation dated back 20 years ago, and he committed suicide, or he died by suicide. I prefer to say that he died by suicide. And the other police officer, well, the investigation's still going on, because that takes a long time. So out of those 32 allegations, those brave women who testified without their faces being covered were not believed, and their stories weren't collaborated. And that's what the DPCP, the prosecutor, says, and that's what the SPVM says. It's not because they don't believe that these things didn't happen. It's because they can't corroborate it. So they can't it's police officers' version and the victim's version. And, these women are vulnerable women. They're women that, may live on the street. They may be prostitutes, maybe alcoholics, maybe drug addicts. It's not just women that made these accusations. There were men as well. And they're all suffering from the same issues. And they just weren't believed. It's not that they weren't believed. There's no proof. There's no proof. So, look at the news this past week. There was some robberies in the Walmart, and they have a picture of the suspect, and they want you to identify him. May Joke, in her testimony, said that there was a case, because there's so many cases that are frivolous, allegations against police officers. This woman alleged that this police officer made some sexual advances towards her or at her, or was rough with her, something. There was a video, and in the video that wasn't edited, it wasn't spliced, you could see for sure that there was no abuse. So it saved the police. It saved money. So come on. Put some cameras on these people. It's going to save them from false accusations, from all of these frivolous accusations. There are 1,800 complaints approximately, maybe a little less than 1,800 complaints per year at the Police Ethics Commission. And only about 10% of those are investigated. So that means about 1,600 people make complaints against police officers, and they're just not founded. And that's basically because they can't find proof. But if you were to go to the cops and or make a complaint and say, on August 5th of 2018, this police officer made a pass at me, then you would be able to go back, in this commission, in the inquiry, there's a lot of testimony that I'm going to go into in part 3, which is going to be, I'm not sure what the title is. This title is The Rabbit Hole, because it's incredible. And the conclusion that I have from everything that I've read is that they can't corroborate it. It's not that people don't believe that these things didn't happen. It's that they can't corroborate it. And you have all of the police force who have a law, Article 40 or 240, that says that if you're a police officer and you see a fellow police officer committing a derogatory act, then you're supposed to tell on them. It's the law. It doesn't happen. There's very, very, very few of those reported cases. So again, I say, let's get some body cams, let's get some dash cams, let's save us some money in the long run. We can't, there's too many investigations, there's too many allegations. The public confidence is at risk. So go sign that petition at the National Assembly, and stay tuned for part 3, because I'll talk more about the inquiry itself and what I saw, because you saw the director of the SQ at the time of the Val d'Or crisis, Martin Prudhomme, who's now being investigated by the BEI. You know, we got to ask ourselves some questions. And also the director of the penal, like if you have internal conflict or internal like penalties that you have to do, he speaks. There's a lot of SQ officers that testify in this commission, and I was lucky enough to watch them all, and I learned a lot. So I'll give you a little basis on that. Again, why I think it makes the cameras important. And I'm going to finish off on a positive note with the Saskatoon police. That's going to be in part 3. The police chief there, they did some major changes. They did some that are quantified with money, and that has raised the confidence of the public. So I want to thank you for listening. I know it might have been long, and there's just so much stuff, but I'm going to try to keep these videos coming. Comment, ask questions, and be kind, and let's be better.